Hello, Lash fam. I hope you guys have enjoyed this ebook thus far. Watch me create this Wispy Volume Set on my beautiful model. First things first, we're going to start off by taping our model down. I personally like to use gel iPads, but you guys are more than welcome to use tape, microfoam tape. It doesn't really matter as long as you're making sure the natural lashes are all taped down properly. You want to make sure that for this step, you are not going above her waterline when you're taping her because that can cause a corneal abrasion and it can also be very uncomfortable during the appointment. There's just many ways that you can cause irritation to the eye with an iPad and tape. So just be careful that you're always able to see her waterline. Once I place my iPad, I go in additionally with some tape just to secure that iPad won't be moving around if my client starts talking to me and to secure that I get any natural lashes. Now I'm going in with more tape, and this is just to bring the inner and outer corners upwards a little bit. This helps me with lifting. If you can see, her lashes are really straight, so it just creates a little bit of a lift, assuring that as I'm placing and isolating, I will not be getting any lashes stuck to the iPad. And you just want to make sure you're placing them on the inner and outer corners and then kind of pulling inwards to create that lift. Once you've gotten your client completely taped down, we're going to start off by placing our very first handmade spike on the center of the eye. We're going to be placing this spike on the top layer. Just remember, all your spikes go on the top layer. You want to start off your spike pattern by placing one single spike in the center and then adding one on each side, or just adding first 3 spikes. They're going to set the tone for the rest of your spikes. What I don't want you guys to do is just randomly start jumping around the eye and placing spikes at a random, just because in order for us to assure symmetry, it's important that we follow a pattern, because if you're jumping around the eye, you're not always going to be guaranteed that your spikes will meet where they're supposed to, if that makes sense. And if you're just jumping around the eye, it's not guaranteed that you're going to be placing in the exact same spot on the other eye. Just make sure that you follow a pattern. I know that sometimes trying something new or trying to break old habits can be a little challenging, but I promise if you just try this a couple times, it'll stick and you'll never want to go back. So as you guys can see, I've already placed 3 spikes. So I noticed that I kind of started a little more to the right. So I'm going in and I'm adding another spike to the left side just to make sure it just kind of blends everything for me visually. I'm like a very visual person. As you guys can see, I didn't write out any mapping. The mapping will be in the ebook, so you'll know exactly what mapping I did. But I don't like to write or draw on the iPad. I don't know why, but it just doesn't, I don't find it helpful. I can memorize, and so I'm a very visual person. And once I decide on the map, it's like all in my head. But here, now I'm going inward. So after you place your 3 spikes in the center, or you set your pattern, you're going to continue to work in one direction. In this case, I chose to work inward, but you can also do outward. The important thing here is to make sure that you stick to that direction until you run out of space. So I'm going to continue going inward until I place the very last spike on the inner corner lashes before I move on to the outer corner. A couple of things that I want you guys to remember when it comes to spikes is it's really important that you continue to keep an eye on the size of your spikes. You want to make sure that they're all almost identical. Obviously, that's going to be impossible, but just avoid having like a really thin spike and then a really thick spike. Try to keep the diameter as evenly matched as possible. And when you're placing, also make sure that you're not placing them too close together. I know they may look like there's too many spikes right now, but I promise you, the number one mistake I see so many people create when trying to recreate one of my sets is they're just simply not doing enough spikes. So while we want to make sure that we're adding enough spikes, we also have to watch out that we're not placing them where they're touching. That's important. You do have to leave a little bit of space. Once I place all of my inner corner spikes, I'm gonna let go of that inner corner, like just release the tension there in that tape and pull a little bit on the outer and continue my pattern where I left off. Just making sure I'm leaving about 1 to 2 natural lashes in between, keeping these spikes on the top layer, making sure they all look as thick as the last. As I'm finishing up the outer corner with these spikes, I want you guys to take notice that my very last spike placed is not on the very outer lash. I leave a handful of natural lashes because when I'm mixing in spikes and fans in any given set, I always like to make sure that my last lash is a fan. My beginning lash in the inner corner will always be a fan as well. I just feel like starting a set with a spike looks awkward and ending it with a spike also looks awkward. So you want to make sure that starting and ending your fans are what is more noticeable. Now I'm just continuing the same process on the left eye. I'm starting off by setting my first spike in the center and then just creating my pattern on each side, and then I'll continue to work inward before working outward. Once I have laid all of my spikes down on each eye and make sure that everything is symmetrical and even, I will then use an iPad and lift up all of the spikes that I've lashed, focusing first on the center. I weave out all of those natural lashes. Now make sure you're paying attention to your wispy ratios. This is a wispy volume, so you will be going a little bit fuller than you would for a hybrid, but still make sure that it evenly matches the density of your spikes. You don't want to have a very heavy set at the bottom and then light spikes because it won't blend and you want it to look effortless. So just keep that in mind. You can always go in and add more fans if you feel like, you need more volume. And it's easier to do that than have to go in and remove a whole bunch of fans. Not only that, but it'll take you a lot longer as well. So I'm working on the center of the eye first. I go in and lash like almost every other lash, focusing on the bottom layer more. Um, and just lash a couple here and there in the middle. The one layer you do really want to focus on is the bottom because that's the lashes that our clients see. I will then get the iPad and adjust it. Notice how it doesn't lose its stickiness. I love these iPads for isolating. This is like my go-to technique. And these iPads make it so easy because they don't crimp the lashes. They don't flatten the lashes. They're very gentle, yet sticky enough that they're not going to be detaching, or I'm not going to have to use tape to hold them in place. They hold pretty well. So I'm just going in, finishing up that inner corner. Once I'm done with that, outer corner. Once I'm done with that outer corner, I'll remove the iPad and adjust it to where I'm able to work on the inner corner. And I repeat this process for both eyes. Every time that I remove the iPad, I like to go in and brush everything, making sure that everything's looking good. At the very end is when I will go in and add fans if I feel like it's necessary, or maybe go in and add a spike if I feel like I've lost it in the quadrant or something. So never be afraid to do that. I actually encourage everyone, once you're done and everything looks good, to just double check that everything is looking really, really symmetrical. So I'm continuing to work on the outer corner, getting it all lashed. And just from personal preference, I do like to leave like 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 natural lashes in the very outer corner, because it's not really necessary to lash every single lash you see. Sometimes if you lash all the way to the very outer corner, those lashes can droop down and get stuck. I will then just repeat the process, starting in the center and then adjusting my eye pad and working on the outer and inner corners of the other eye as well. Once everything is said and done, I will brush through it all, fan her for a minute or two, set the lashes with our Ultra Bonder, just applying it to the roots with the microfiber applicator, the top and underneath as well. And after a minute or two, I remove all of the eye pads, the tapes, and voila! Beautiful, beautiful wispy volume set. It accentuates her eyes so beautifully. Thank you guys so much for being here. It means the world to me. I hope that this ebook was everything you expected.